An FDA advisory panel has voted in favor of authorizing Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. It follows a day-long televised meeting where experts considered the safety and effectiveness of the vaccine. The U.S. could soon become the third country to authorize Pfizer's drug. The FDA must approve the panel's recommendation before the first 2.9 million doses are distributed across the U.S. Patients will need to receive 2 doses of the vaccine 3 weeks apart. We've learned that the U.S. Marshal Service will in fact provide security as the vaccine is moved around the country to distribution sites. All of this comes as the U.S. records another day of historic deaths. More than 3,000 Americans died from the virus on Wednesday. That's the highest single-day loss. Infections are also skyrocketing. The total number of cases is now above 15.5 million. That's more than 4% of the entire U.S. population. More than 106,000 people are currently hospitalized, and ICUs across the country are running out of beds. Nikki Batiste begins our coverage in New York City.
No data.
The FDA's advisory panel overwhelmingly voted to recommend Pfizer's vaccine. The first doses in the U.S. could start shipping out tomorrow.
We've been working very closely with our state and local partners to make sure that they have plans in place to identify providers that are able to receive, store, and use the vaccine.
Shipping giants UPS and FedEx will work to distribute the vaccine. UPS began sending these vaccine kits last night, which arrived at some hospitals today, containing syringes, masks, and a diluting agent for the Pfizer vaccine, which will be used to administer it.
The vaccines in phase 1A will go to hospitals for healthcare workers.
It will be up to state officials like Pennsylvania's Health Secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine, to get the initial nearly 6 million doses into people's arms.
What are the challenges states across the country are facing when it comes to distribution?
Well, I wouldn't call it a logistical nightmare. I would call it a significant logistical challenge. For instance, we don't exactly know how much vaccine we're going to get potentially next week.
Clinical trials show the Pfizer vaccine was nearly 95% effective for adults 18 to 64. It was just as effective for people of all ethnicities. But some groups, like people with weak immune systems, individuals with severe allergic reactions, and pregnant women, who were all excluded from the trials, could be restricted from getting the shot.
I'm personally optimistic.
Dr. David Rice, who served as a critical care air transport doctor deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, has been working in the intensive care units at UPMC's Pasavan Hospital for the last 8 months. He is considered high priority for a vaccine and hopes to receive one of the first doses.
I'm excited to get this ball rolling and finally get something going that's going to potentially put an end to this.
The FDA's Vaccine Advisory Committee will meet again next week to review Moderna's vaccine. The drug manufacturer plans to distribute 18 million doses by the end of the year and announced today it is now studying its vaccine's safety and effectiveness in children ages 12 to 17. Lana?
Thank you, Nikki. Coronavirus deaths are nearing a sobering 300,000 here in the U.S., and the spread shows no signs of stopping. As health experts warn, we're in for some dark days ahead. Janet Shamlian reports.
A gut-wrenching record, more than 3,000 deaths, the highest single-day total.
Yep.
Hospitals like Methodist near Minneapolis at the breaking point.
People are dying alone.
Nurse Jenna Jacobs is watching patients pass without the comfort of someone they love.
It's very hard, and it's our reality right now. Like, we are holding people's hands on their last breaths every day.
A grim reality tonight. The CDC forecasting up to 362,000 dead by January 2nd, almost the population of Cleveland.
It's both physically and mentally exhausting. People are doing longer shifts. They're doing more shifts.
Desperate measures, from the battlefield Type 10 set up in Los Angeles to reopening plans for a long-closed Phoenix area hospital to help house the surge. Virginia's governor announced a midnight curfew starting Monday, and Pennsylvania's governor late today ordered the shutdown of indoor dining, casinos, and school sports. Coronavirus is spreading like a wind-fueled fire.
She gave birth to her son, but didn't get to hold him. Because right after she gave birth, that's when they put the tube in.
Michael Avalos lost his sister to the virus. 33-year-old Erica Becerra's health declined so quickly, she was never able to hold baby Diego in her arms.
Towards the last moments, she was tearing. I know she heard us. We prayed for her. We talked to her. We comforted her until the last moments.
And a sad trend to report. The U.S. Postal Service says that in the many letters it receives addressed to Santa this time of year, there's a common theme. Children asking not for toys, but for the health and safety of mommy and daddy. Lana?
Janet, just heartbreaking. Thank you for sharing their story. Dr. Teresa Amato joins me now. She's the chair of emergency medicine at Long Island's Jewish Forest Hills. Doctor, as we've been reporting, an FDA panel has formally recommended the Pfizer vaccine for emergency use. What did these experts consider in their decision?
Well, first of all, it's a very exciting day, and there does seem to be some hope on the horizon with this news. So the FDA takes this quite seriously. They're really trying to make sure that you want to make sure that the vaccine is effective, but you also want to make sure that it's safe. So what they were doing today, the advisory board, was really looking at the data that was supplied to them by Pfizer, looking at the number of patients, a number of people that were in the study, and also how many adverse reactions there were, and what the rate was of infectivity after they had gotten the vaccines. And it appears with all of the data that they received today that they did move to recommend emergency use of this vaccine. So very exciting news for us here in the United States.
Yeah, it is a heartbreaking day considering the number of deaths, and it's so reassuring to know that there is that glimmer of light on the horizon. But as you know, there's a lot of people who are still concerned about unknown aspects of the vaccine, especially when it comes to any additional adverse reactions to it. What can you tell us about that?
So I think you have to understand that all vaccines can have some side effects, right? It's trying to make your immune system try to start to fight and make some antibodies. So it's not uncommon for vaccines to cause you to have sort of mild symptoms of the actual disease itself. The thing is, this vaccine does not have any live virus in it. It's not giving you COVID, but your body is starting to rev up and make some antibodies. So the side effects that people probably could expect is, one, some pain, tenderness at the location of the vaccine itself, and also some mild body aches, some chills, and perhaps even a mild fever. All of these side effects, however, seem to be very transient, lasting just 1 to 2 days, and most people did very well just taking some over-the-counter medication. So it does seem like, although there are some side effects, it sounds like they're very manageable.
And those side effects pale in comparison to the pandemic that we're currently in, of course. But there are still many Americans who are skeptical of the vaccine. I think you were saying something very important just a moment ago, that there is not live vaccine, that people are not getting COVID. For people who are still uncertain about the science of it, remind us, how exactly does the vaccine work to fight COVID-19?
So all of us have seen the picture of COVID virus now, and if you look at the pictorial of it, it's a round virus with these little spike proteins that are sticking out from it. Those spike proteins really help it get into our cells and start causing all its damage. And from the very beginning, scientists thought that those spike proteins would be the thing that we could use to leverage making some vaccines. So what they did was, once they got a hold of the COVID virus, they looked at its entire, what we call its mRNA, its sort of blueprints for making proteins. And they were able to carve out the very tiny bit of mRNA that creates these proteins, these spike proteins that are on the surface of the virus. The thing about mRNA, though, it's very fragile. So at room temperature, it sort of just disintegrates. They also had to figure out a way of getting this mRNA into our bodies. And so to do that, they put it in this sort of a lipid bubble or ball, if you will. So have to keep it very cold and have to put it into this lipid sphere. Once you get the vaccine, this lipid sphere with a tiny bit of the mRNA will enter into your bloodstream, and the mRNA will go into your cells. It will now instruct your cells to start creating these spike proteins. The mRNA itself will just disintegrate on its own, and that will no longer be in your body. But those spike proteins that you make will come to the surface of your cells. Your immune system is always walking around, looking around, trying to see things that are not you to defend itself against. it will come up against these spike proteins that you have created in your blood cells and into your cells, and it will start to create antibodies. So now when you're exposed to the COVID virus will have these spike proteins on it. Your body will immediately recognize that this is what these spike proteins are, and you have now antibodies against it. It will now start revving up and making lots and lots of antibodies, which will effectively stop the COVID virus from infecting your cells any further. So it's actually pretty simple, although the science behind it's very difficult. But it's a very interesting and unique way to try to create your body making antibodies.
I thought you described it wonderfully, and so interesting that our bodies are reacting to that protein as opposed to a live virus, which I know people have so much fear about. Obviously, 3,124 people died from coronavirus in the U.S. on Wednesday, and that's more people than 9/11. We know that even though the vaccine is starting to roll out, that it's still going to be a long time before this pandemic is over. And we are hearing from health experts that they are very concerned about the spread. At this point, what should we all be doing to contain the spread? And is there anything other than a vaccine that is going to help stop this virus?
So this has been such a very terrible several months for our country, and I completely understand people's fatigue, the COVID fatigue that has been setting in. I live it as well, and I know how hard it's been. And now that we have this vaccine on the horizon, it's like we have this light at the end of this tunnel. You know, we're getting close to the end. From the beginning, I've always been saying this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We are getting very, very close to the finish line on this one with the vaccine on the horizon. But given the fact that you have to get two shots of the vaccine, either 3 to 4 weeks apart, and then wait another 7 to 10 days after that to actually be immune, this is time consuming. And plus getting these vaccines out to the public is also going to be time consuming. So I don't really see this getting, really to the end until probably the springtime of 2021. So now is the time to really just hunker down as much as you can with the Christmas and holiday season coming. We keep trying to tell you just keep those the celebrations to a minimum this year and just concentrate on next year's holiday season. Wear your mask as much as possible, especially if you can't social distance. Try to do outdoor activities. I know it's getting cold out, but if you can be outdoors, that absolutely will help. Limit how many people that you're in when you're having any kind of a social engagement. Really think of your older adults in your family and your loved ones, and we're really doing it for them as much as possible because they're the ones that have been really hit hard with this virus, and they're the ones that are having a high mortality. So even if you're not afraid for yourself, we keep saying, you do it for your family, you do it for your loved ones, and really we know that it works. Mask wearing, social distancing. We just got to get through to this vaccine getting out.
All right, Dr. Amato, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe.